back to a Dove Dive. And I am your normal solo host for Dove Dive, Joe Dove. But with me in a special event is Greg Massi. Greg Massi is an amazing individual that I met in my previous life as a videographer for independent wrestling. And I noticed he had an amazing ear for sound as he was working with Steve on sound. Steve, as you know, is the person that helped us jump off onto this podcast world. So always a big shout out to Steve.
Love Steve.
Yeah, Steve's a great dude. Great dude. Always glad to talk to him and see him. I'm actually going to surprise him. I'm going to the Late Show on Tuesday. My aunt has a friend that works there. So we're gonna be there. But ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Greg. Greg has worked with Kayodot and has a lot of amazing music history, and I'm so excited to have him here on the special Dove Dive. Greg, take it away. Let us hear about you. Tell the Disc Dungeoneers about yourself.
Oh, okay. My name is Greg Massi. I'm a Cancer. I don't know. I've been a musician. Well, I've been playing guitar for about 30 years now, which I've white beard, feel old, but yeah. So I've been involved in a few different musical projects over the years. I was originally in a band called Maudlin of the Well. We started in 1996 with some demos and everything like that, and we got signed and to like a small independent label, and we released a few records with them in 1999 and 2001. So it's actually the 20th anniversary of our big double album that we released back in 2001. And then we did Maudlin for a couple years, and then in 2003 we kind of morphed. Maudlin Well morphed into Kayodot, and it was kind of a slight change in band members, and it was some slight change in sound. But the main person, Toby Driver, is the main guy in both those bands. He writes the music for each of those bands, and so and I've known him since high school, so we've just always been involved with music one way or another. And so so we formed Kayodot in 2003. We put out a record in 2003, and then we put out a record in 2005 that I was on, and we did a lot of national touring at that time, getting in the van and going, not making any money, but living the road dog life. And then there was just like, we kind of reached this point in 2006 where, some other members of the band had left the band acrimoniously, and I didn't want to do that. But I was feeling like I needed to step away from a bit. So after we were done with all the gig commitments for that year, I said, I'm just going to take a break. I need to do my own thing or figure out my life. One of those things, and so I left Kayodot in 2006. They continued to put out records for many, many years still, and got better and better with each release because Toby's an amazing musician, and he works really, really hard at crafting, a new style of music, but he really works hard at bringing a lot of originality to the table with that band. And so in the years since that, I formed a band called Balaset, which was my kind of prog rock stylings, and I released a couple albums with them. An album and an EP. And then I joined a doom metal band called Concilium, and we put out our debut EP in 2019. And then the pandemic happened, and we have like a full album we're still working on, but we're all kind of separated now in various parts of the country.
So it's going to be like Nirvana, like you guys might break up, and then somebody's going to sit on all this recorded.
No.
It's the Holy Grail.
No.
No.
We're not breaking up. It's just our drummer moved to Minneapolis, and
oh wow,
and our singer's been back and forth.
What's up with Minneapolis? Because we had a singer on. I have a site called tobeseen.com, which is going to be where this video lives. But I've noticed a lot of musicians and a lot of singers. His name's Stefano Andreotti. He moved out to Minnesota too. Like the music scene is happening.
I guess, yeah. My drummer. He didn't move out for a musical reason. He moved out because that's where his girlfriend's family is, and they were trying to. Oh. They just wanted to change the scenery because I'm in Boston, or outside of Boston, in Massachusetts. So yeah, he just needed to change scenery, and then my singer, she didn't move there, but she met her fiance there, and so they're just back and forth between. Because that's where he lives. So
right.
But I can't really speak to
the things you do for love.
Yeah. But yeah, like I can't speak to the whole Minneapolis scene, why they would, or if it's happening or not.
Yeah, apparently it is.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's a trained opera singer, so.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So he went there. Now he's I think he's trying to sing with the whatever it is orchestra out there. So.
All right, good for him. Yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
So Concilium is kind of been my main band project up until like the pandemic happened, and then since the pandemic, I've been working on a lot of solo electronic and synth stuff.
My genre, I love that. That's my favorite.
All right, then I should send you all my stuff after.
I think you should. That'd be great.
So basically, I had started working on it before pandemic, and I released one single song, and then and it was funny because I released a song that was called "For When You Fall Apart" is the name of the song, and then the pandemic happened a month later, and everything fell apart. So I was just like,
"Oh wow,
sorry,
that's a crazy coincidence."
My bad. But yeah, so that project is called Daliad, Dahlia with a D at the end, and so that's been kind of what I've been doing mostly since 2020. Is I just was releasing a bunch of different individual songs here and there, and then I got involved with the dungeon synth scene in 2020, which is kind of an offshoot of both kind of black metal and ambient at the same time. And I can't really speak to the history of it. I'm not as well versed in it as friends of mine, but I started talking virtually with a lot of dungeon synth artists and meeting a lot of dungeon synth, and got encouragement to do that. So I released a full length kind of dungeon synth record with Daliad earlier this year. Again, I'll send you all the links and everything to that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But
share it with our folks.
So yeah, I've been doing that, and and you brought up Kayodot, and the reason why Kayodot's kind of come back into my life is, during 2020, Toby, the main guy in Kayodot, he was working on another project, and he had been again, like the rest of us were doing. We were just hanging out in our home studios, doing random crap, to pass the time. And he had been sending me some. He's like, look, I really want to make kind of a metal record. He's like, I don't know what it's gonna be for yet, but I hear your style of guitar playing on certain parts. Do you mind playing on it? And I was like, yeah, send it to me. And so he was sending me tracks all throughout last summer, and I was just adding. My main thing in Maudlin and Kayodot was guitar solos. So I added some guitar solos to these tracks of his, and other like melody things that he wanted me to kind of interpret in my own style. And it was funny, and then I didn't think anything of it. He's just like, yeah, well, I don't know what's going to happen with it. I was like, all right, cool. And then in October, he's like, oh yeah, so that's going to be the new Kayodot record. by the
Oh,
way.
nice.
And I was like, oh, okay. And so he got signed to Kayodot is on this label called Prophecy Productions, who is really, really good, and has a, I believe, has a known for curating good music. So they're
Hmm.
but as it is with any kind of music release, it's like, well, we're not going to be able to release this record until next year. So it's kind of like, hey, you're on the new Kayodot record, but don't talk about it because we're not going to announce it until, whenever it was that they first started talking about it. And so because it was coming out, just came out the end of October, and since this year is also, like I said, it's the 20th anniversary of the Maudlin of the Well records, which a lot of people enjoy. I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I just know that I just know, like,
Just so there
it's
we go.
weird. Like, we
Pat.
were virtually ignored when we first came out, but it's kind of
Hmm.
grown over the years, and
I mean, I've heard it before,
yeah,
so I was like, wait a minute, for real?
yeah.
That's you?
And that's fine. It's cool. It's a really cool, fun thing. But yeah, like, so it's the 20th anniversary of the Maudlin of the Well records. The 20th anniversary. It's the 25th anniversary of when we started Maudlin of the Well in
Wow.
'96, and this new Kayodot record's coming out, and the new Kayodot record, basically, it's Toby did, the music, wrote the music. I did the guitar solos and little melodies here and there. And our friend Jason Byron, who's been writing lyrics for Maudlin of the Well and Kayodot, he's always been writing lyrics. Um, he used to sing in Kayodot, in Maudlin of the Well, but he just does lyrics now. But so he wrote the lyrics. So it was kind of like, all right, so the three people who started Maudlin of the Well in '96 are now the three people on this new Kayodot record. So it all kind of like,
It's a symbiosis.
yeah, it all kind of ties together.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so we did some photo shoots, and so it's really funny to me that, like, this project where I was just kind of like helping out a friend, it's now like I'm in the promotional materials, like my face is all over the place, and I mean,
Yeah,
in
that's
terms
kinda
of the
cool.
record, not, you know. I'm definitely not the best looking of the three of them, so, like, I don't get featured as much.
It doesn't matter.
But
As long as you
yeah,
get your face out there, that's the important
but
thing, man.
but yeah, so that's it.
So let me ask you, did you start out as a guitarist in school? Like, how did that come about? What
Oh
was it
yeah,
that
that was
that brought you to guitar? Yeah.
well, that was so. I kind of grew up in. I always think I feel like I grew up on the cusp of certain eras. So I
Hmm.
was too young to really take part in, like, the late '80s, like, hair metal, hard rock. Like,
Okay.
that's when I was coming into my own as a music
Okay.
listener. So,
Uh,
but I was also listening to rap or whatever else was out at that time, like
hmm.
89, 90. Um,
Oh, so walk this way, type
it
of.
was after Walk This Way. It was more.
Oh,
I
okay.
was prime. Like,
Oh,
I owned.
that's like grunge, right?
Yeah, it's basically, so I
Yeah,
owned.
yeah, Stone
Yeah,
Temple and
and
yeah.
so yeah, that was all kind of like my generation's music was the '90s kind of stuff. But I had kind of grown up a little bit. My siblings are a little older than me, so I kind of had grown up enjoying, like, hair metal and rock, and it was just kind of funny because then I started really getting into heavy metal in, like,
Mm.
'91, and right when Metallica's Black Album came out,
Oh.
and that's where I kind of said, all right, I want to. It was funny, like, I was thinking about originally picking up bass, um, but my sister had a guitar, so it's just kind of like, all right, well, I'll use guitar for now, and then maybe change to bass. I don't know, um, and because I really wanted to be the bass player in Poison. He was like, he was like the cool.
I was thinking when you said hairband, that's actually the first band that
Yeah,
came to my
like,
mind.
they were a
Oh,
big
like
deal for
Poison.
me. Like, I can't really
Yeah,
listen to them as much anymore, but
but back in
back
the
then
day,
it was an amazing, a
yeah,
big,
they were great. Yeah.
big thing.
So what also tells me that we're probably the same age.
43. I'm 43.
Oh, okay, yeah. We're in the same realm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of this weird. Like I said, it's this cusp because I was kind of coming into my own at the tail end of all the hair metal rock stuff, but then also that's when grunge came in, and then and then I wanted to be like this kind of guitar hero, like
Mm-hmm.
guitar solo guy, and then it was kind of like
Right.
grunge came in and said, "Oh, we don't really like guitar solos anymore," and so, which
Yeah,
is
that's
kind of
right. They kind of
it's
ended
kind
that.
of a it's just kind of a bullshit thing because like there's a lot of great guitar players in those bands, like Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains is like amazing, so it's like
Absolutely.
it's not like they went away, but it was just kind of like the way it was kind of presented in like guitar magazines was like, oh, no one wants guitar solos anymore, and and all that bullshit. And then so yeah, so I was in kind of a weird place because I was like listening to, like I said, I was listening to Metallica, and then um, got into Megadeth, and Iron
Mm.
Maiden was a big one, and Judas Priest, and all these bands who really were more prominent in the '80s
Right.
and really weren't doing much in the early '90s, but that was like what I was into, and so yeah, that was kind of the start of my guitar stuff. Was like I was just like um, always playing guitar, and then like I said, I met Toby and uh, Jason Byron. Well, I call him Byron, but so Toby and Byron and I were in high school together from
Oh.
'92 to '96, and so
Mm-hmm.
Toby and I bonded first over guitar stuff, and he had a guitar too, and he also played bass. He wanted to play bass too, and so and then we met Byron, and then so we were all kind of like doing our own little projects on, like, at first we were just doing it on like tape decks, like we would
Yeah.
record, and it's funny, you have to get it,
Wow.
yeah, tape decks, like boom boxes, and
Yeah. No, I know.
and then,
I know.
sorry, I never know.
The two button. Boop,
I
yeah.
I never
Yeah.
know.
I'm not this. I'm your generation, so
Okay,
I
good.
I
All
know
right, good. All right,
exactly. Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
If I ever
Yeah.
sound like I'm pandering or talking down or like sounding
No. No.
like an
No. No.
old
No.
man,
No.
just
Don't
let me
worry.
know. Like I can cut that shit
Yeah.
out. But um,
Yeah.
but yeah. So we recorded on boom boxes for a while, and then it was like, okay, well, we want to record more than one audio track. So it's like, okay, well, you take one boom box and you record on it, and then you play that back, and then record that onto another boom box and play along with it, and you have two tracks, and it's like, and uh and then in like '94 I got a 4-track recorder, which is what we did a lot of work on. So yeah, so we just started just doing our own stupid little projects on tapes. We've all got tapes of like
Yeah.
the real naive stuff music we were making back then, and then yeah, and then that just kind of, like I said, it progressed into started Maudlin the Well in '96. But then we were off in different places, like college wise. So I was just kind of trying to continue to get better as a guitar player. But we didn't even really start playing gigs as Maudlin the Well until like 2000. So
And it's a very different world to touring from 2000 to now,
oh,
especially
very
with the
much so.
chaos that's happened in Texas recently. I mean, aside from the CDC guidelines and everybody's got to get vaccinated. I'm sure people are lying about their cards, but like, how is speak on the differences between touring then and touring now? What would you say, your favorites are back in
Well,
the
so I
day?
can't speak to touring now because I haven't really done any touring
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
yeah, not yet, in like 15 years. So I mean
whoa.
the most was like Concilium went up to Vermont for a gig, and that was an overnight trip, which was a big deal. But
Hmm.
I've pretty much stayed local with any gigs
Oh,
here.
interesting.
But with Kayodot, we did 3 national tours between 2004 and 2006, along with a couple like smaller regional tours just in the New England area, or
Hmm.
East Coast area. So, I can't speak to exactly how things have changed. What I can say is obviously we didn't have a GPS,
Hmm.
so we had
Quick, pull the map
yeah,
out.
we had an atlas.
Yeah, I
I
know
mean, we
those
had it,
days.
and
Yeah.
we hey, I remember very vividly before either the 2004 or 2005 tour, we were printing out like
Oh my God. Google
Google
Maps.
Maps
Yeah,
or
yeah.
MapQuest. I'm sorry, it was MapQuest.
MapQuest.
We
Yes,
were
that's
we
what
were
it was.
doing
Yes,
MapQuest
yes.
directions for every gig. So we would do like from starting point to the first gig, from that gig to the next gig, and we just like had like a bunch. We had those, but then if we got confused by something, then we would pull out the atlas. And so, you had to know how to read an atlas. That was a big thing.
Yeah.
And so that was the big change, the big difference, I would say. And then obviously it was like we had cell phones, but we didn't have smartphones. So, um,
yeah, those subtle changes.
subtle
But I
changes,
mean,
yeah.
like, yeah. But like your gear, like I see you have a litany of guitars
Yes,
behind you.
I have a lot of guitars. Too many,
Yeah, like
some would say.
did you end up like, okay, do you always go back to your original guitar, or do you feel like, well, this one's better because the frets are better, or
It's
you know,
it's gotten a little different over the years as I look at the different ones. Like now, I look at it as guitars. So each individual guitar serves a different purpose. Like some I like better for certain things than others. That kind of a thing. It's like subtle differences in tone and whatever. Also, I just like having guitars and stringed instruments around the house. It's like
it's a great decor.
like
Yeah.
you can't see everything here, but yeah, I mean, in addition to like the electric guitars, I mean, I've got acoustic, 12 string, ukulele. I've got a balalaika over there. I've got a mandolin. I've got a cigar box guitar, which I just got recently. So it's like I just
Nice.
love stringed instruments, so I just want to have as many as possible. And but it's funny when you bring up guitar, because
Oh, nice.
this is my uh, guitar that I've had since 1993,
Oh,
and it's gone through a lot of changes from when it doesn't look anything like it did when I was touring with it with Kayodot back in the early 2000s. But this is kind of my
wow.
main, like that's like my baby, as it were. Uh, and but yeah, when we were touring with Kayodot, I had a much simpler setup. I had just a basic Mesa Boogie uh, guitar head, which is over. You can't see it, but it's over there. So I had like guitar head and big old guitar cabinet, and I had when we were touring with Maudlin, I would sometimes use three guitars because we had a lot of different alternate tunings. But when it came time for Kayodot, it was like, yeah, we had a certain amount of room in because we had like a U-Haul thing that a trailer,
Yeah.
and we had like 7 people in the band, so you're dealing with like 3 guitar rigs, you're dealing with a bass rig, you're dealing with violin, you're dealing with upright bass, drums. I mean, it was like so. I had to kind of like really be economical about it, so I really just did like I did a rack mount effect unit, and I did 2 guitars was what I would tour with, and then I lost one of those on tour, which sucked
Ooh.
in New York. Which and I
Oh well, if you're gonna lose it, that's when you
yeah,
lose it.
so
Because now some homeless guy's literally busking all over New
probably
York with
with it,
that. So you,
yeah,
you probably saved
yeah.
somebody's.
If you see somebody in New York with a black uh, ESP LTD 7 string, then that's
I know it's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
It might be
Well,
mine.
I know.
And it's okay. I mean, it wasn't even. I didn't really enjoy that guitar a ton, so I wasn't like completely heartbroken. Other than just like it sucks losing shit. But
Yeah.
but yeah. So we would tour with 2 guitars, and then so our van. We had a real cheap van that we would drive around in, and we would have a trailer, and then in the back seat or in the back of the van there was one bench, and then the rest was just open floor. So there would be like 2 people would be on the bench, and then the
Oh
rest of
boy,
us would be have our little
holding on for dear life.
yeah, we'd have our little space on the floor in the back
Yeah.
there, and I was usually on the floor. So I carved out my own little spot, which was, and so yeah, we would just I mean there were there was personal issues that arose with different people over those tours, but in general it was a lot of fun to just to go out there and see the country. Like that's I think that's something that people don't. I don't know if it's that they don't think about or don't appreciate as much. I hope, but when you're out there and you're touring, and especially growing up in New England or in the Northeast or New York, New Jersey, I think
Hmm.
you have like you have this kind of preconceived notion of our country. It's like,
Yeah.
and
I'm guilty of that. I'm from Fox Point, Rhode
oh,
Island.
okay, yeah,
So,
you're you're
I know.
you know the
I
drill.
totally get it.
So
I made it to Jersey right now, so maybe when I'm 70, I'll make it to the rest of the
yeah,
United
okay,
States.
baby steps, but
Exactly.
but it's so it's interesting because I mean we played all over. At this point, I think there was maybe only, I feel like I played in like 45 or 46 of the continental United States.
Nice.
There's a couple I've never played in, but
Hawaii.
Well, yeah, Hawaii,
Yeah.
Alaska, Alabama, we didn't do a show in. West Virginia, we didn't do a show in. North Dakota, we didn't do a show in. But Montana, I don't think we did a show in. But yeah, anyway, whatever. But it was interesting going through, seeing. I mean, it was my first time seeing the Midwest, and hanging out in Chicago and hanging out in seeing Cleveland and Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit. Oof.
Which was
See all the Kiss stuff that's lying around.
well, and see bombed out houses
that's a shame what happened.
it
in
is.
Detroit,
But I will say, like our first Detroit gig, kind of sketchy. Our second one, second one a year later, totally fine. So it's just like,
oh wow,
like some places lived up to their reputation, some exceeded or impressed us. And it was just it was weird though because I mean we were kind of Kayodot has kind of like an avant-garde slant to it. It's always been that way. So it meant trying to get gigs was tough at first because we didn't have a booking agent. So it's like we were doing it all ourselves. And so a lot of times, we didn't play in rock clubs. Sometimes we did, but for the most part we were like, it was like art spaces, basement shows, bookstores, video stores, just a falafel house in Florida. Like, just any place where there was some sort of like independent guy who wanted interesting arty music would that's generally was where we would end up playing. And so excuse me. So yeah, so it was interesting because you saw a lot of different aspects of the country. I mean, you see a lot. You understanding like how the Midwest is different from the South, which is different from the Southwest, which is different from the West, which is different from the Northwest, which is different from all that, and then you come home to New England and you're like, oh, thank God. But
yeah, I know.
But
I went to Florida and back to up where we are, and it was like home.
Yeah. But it was cool though. I mean, but we got to meet a lot of people because we were also the way it worked back then too was, we didn't really have money for hotels. I mean, how you can fit 7 people in a hotel room. So we ended up staying with people a lot of times, and so you got to meet a lot of different interesting people along the way. And we stayed with Democrats, Republicans, Christians, Satanists,
Wow.
witches, hippies, yuppies, probably. It's just like you stay with anybody who's like really into what you're doing is generous enough to offer their house to you. I'm sure some places we probably shouldn't have stayed in, but
I was just gonna ask you that. Like, did you ever like go, okay, this is a little sketch, and I am quite frightened for my life?
Not frightened for my life. Thankfully, we never were really in that predicament. But yeah, there were a few places where. There's one place where I'm sure I basically was sleeping on someone's dirty laundry in their basement because that's where there was a mattress, and I was just like, I was sick of sleeping on floors, so I'm like, I'll take possible infection to just enjoy the just to be comfortable. Do yourself a favor. Just be comfortable.
Yeah. Do yourself a favor and don't bring a blue light.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And but there's a couple times when we were gonna stay at this crust punk house. And it was just like, it was people who were squatting, so it was like, it was not really up to code. And it was just like, we were just kind of like,
Do you hear
No.
that?
Yeah, like
Do you hear that scratching
Yeah.
on the walls?
I mean, yeah.
Help me!
You try not to be snobby or have an attitude about it if someone's being generous enough to let you sleep there. But there are some times when it's just like I appreciate it, but no.
Yeah.
Like no,
Yeah,
this is
I still have standards.
yeah. I still have some standards,
Right.
but you never want to be a dick about it.
No.
But yeah, so that was a lot of fun, and a lot of those people I met, there's a lot of people who I'm still friends with to this day, and
Oh,
networking. We just a lot of times we were really big with like a lot of the New York bands at that time, the New
mm-hmm.
York kind of like underground avant garde or whatever, and so those
Right.
guys are still friends of mine to this day, and like we, and so that was a lot of that. That's part of the joy is just meeting people
Yeah.
and
Expanding your circle.
yeah, exactly. So it
Yeah.
was a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Did you ever play it? Yeah. Did you ever play at the Elbow Room by any chance?
The Elbow Room.
Yeah. Or the Knitting Factory?
Yes, in New York.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We played in the Knitting Factory basement.
Oh.
So yeah, not really in the Knitting Factory.
So for those who don't know, the Knitting Factory was a really kind of cool venue after certain clubs like Limelight closed down. So that was a spot to like really put yourself out there, and a lot of people got discovered playing in those spots.
Yeah.
So
Well, I can't remember. Like, I get confused. Um, there's a lot of places we played in New York. The Cake Shop, uh,
oh,
Le Poussin Rouge,
don't know
I
that one.
think. The Brooklyn Music Hall, which
I
it was
know,
called
yeah.
something else at that time. I don't know, but yeah, yeah, we played the knitting. Actually, I think the Knitting Factory was. Did we? Did a bunch of people leave after that? I forget. Yeah, that was kind of a weird gig. But and then we also played the Knitting Factory in Los Angeles.
Oh, neat.
You know,
Is that the one that used to be the Matrix?
I have no idea.
Yeah, because there was one club out in L.A. that used to be called the Matrix, which has this real funny like swirl, because that's where Jefferson Airplane took off,
Oh, okay.
and it's like this weird full circle because they took off in the club called the Matrix, and then the Matrix very successful trailer that just dropped used Jefferson Airplane for the Matrix to
Oh,
pop that. Yeah,
interesting.
so it was like this weird. Yeah,
Yeah, I can't.
so I
I
always
don't know.
find those type of
Can't.
things really
I
cool.
can't. I can't remember. I don't know. I didn't know the history of a lot of the different clubs we played at. It was just kind of like, where are we playing? All right.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Is it near anything? Is there food nearby?
Right, that's probably the essential. Is there a toilet?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, is there a place where I can wash myself off?
yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
it's funny when you talk about the differences between touring because, one thing Toby has talked to me about, he's like, I really wish you had been in the band when we actually learned how to tour. He's like, because those were
Mm,
our early days, and those were just us. Like, basically, we're just like, let's just get in a van and travel. And he's like, and now Kayodot is at the point where, yeah, they've had booking agents, and they've been able to go to Europe, and
yeah.
it's like anybody who's been to Europe usually says like, oh, it's so amazing, And I never
Hmm.
got that chance to tour in Europe,
Oh,
so. Um,
yeah. I mean, I don't tour, but I've been to Europe a few times. It's a beautiful
Oh yeah,
place.
it's great. Well, it's the
Yeah,
difference is that they treat you a lot differently. Whereas like
yeah.
it's kind of like in America when you're touring around, it's like okay, you're just kind of at the mercy of you know the venue, and they don't necessarily provide a lot for you. But venues in Europe will provide you a place to stay, provide you food, um, and usually it's because it's you usually have to hire a driver to do it, so you don't have to drive, which is nice.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
you rent gear because sending gear over is
yeah. It's
tough,
a pain.
pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But everything I've heard is just like that yeah, it's a really amazing experience to tour in Europe because they actually treat you with respect for coming to their
Hmm.
venue to play. Whereas America, it's just like you know, depending
Yeah.
on where you go, especially with us, being a 7-person band with like different instruments. Like we had a trumpet player, we had a violin player, and showing up and to like a rock club when we did play rock clubs, and then like seeing that, and they're like, didn't know the sound guys just like, fuck this, I don't know what to do with this shit. So like, yeah, like
Get those PZM mics out, man.
Yeah.
Just get those PZMs out. That's all you gotta do.
Well, yeah, a lot of people did. I mean, and going back to Detroit, I mean, the very first show that first show we did in Detroit, like I said, it was kind of a sleazy place, and the sound guy was like some leftover from the '80s. I mean, he was wearing like a leather cowboy hat and like black leather pants and whatever, and it was just funny. He's like talking through us, and we're like, okay, well, we need mics for this. We need a mic on this, and he's just like, well, I think he had like a 16-channel mixer for the club, and he's like, well, channel 2 doesn't work, channel 5 doesn't work, channel 7 doesn't work.
It's funny. I just went through that.
So we're like, good. So how many mics do you actually have that'll work? Like, and you make do with, but some of those shows probably didn't sound as good, especially in basement shows, like playing house shows.
Oh yeah.
You make the best of the situation, but
Hey, as long as the live sounds good, that's it.
Yeah, and I think too. I mean, I think Toby learned a lot over the different Kayodot tours since then, and so like he knows how to tour properly and make sure what you're doing. Like it's always good to have a fail safe, like to have stuff you can handle on your own, so that you're just like mixing on your end and just kind of sending that to the sound guy if they don't know what the hell they're doing. And so, so I think, the different incarnations of Kayodot have gone through different. I mean, the last couple times they toured, it was a smaller lineup, so you learn how to do it right as you do it.
So that brings us to your podcast.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and that's where I've heard your actual connection to Kayodot, which was surprising to me, but. You actually were kind enough to share some of the sounds of the work that you were doing with them.
Yep.
And it reminded me of like a death metal goth Finjaz.
Yeah, you said that, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Just to,
and I'm sure that's not what you were going for. But.
so it's interesting. It actually going all the way back to when we were in Maudlin of the Well. One of the things that was really big for us at that time was doing metal or whatever with keyboards, and at that time, we've always been fans of new age music, each of us, the three original guys, like we all have different new age stuff we like, or ambient music. Like I said, I'm doing the Dungeon Synth thing now.
Dungeon Synth on the
but like, so keyboards were always a big deal for us, and like soundtracks are always a big deal. So it's just kind of a no-brainer that when Kayodot does something, there's going to be some electronic element. So that they've always been a big part of the band, especially on like the last. I mean, if you listen to the last couple Kayodot records before this one, there's a lot of keyboard stuff on it and synth stuff on it. That's something Toby's really been working on. And Toby just, he put out a new, like a new age project.
Interesting.
Whose name I'm forgetting. So, like, if I tell you, I'm probably gonna mess it up. So I will look that up while we're talking. But, sorry, Allura Crucible. That's the name of the project. So new age, electronic, ambient. It's always been synthesizers has always been a big part of our sound, regardless of when we were in the band together, on our own. It's always been a big deal. So if you say and goth too, like there's a lot of goth influence, which Kayodot has done, on their last few albums too, like in the way like that Toby writes some of the bass lines and everything like that, and that comes from being a fan of bands like The Cure, like Disintegration, Cure. Right. The Cure's Disintegration was a big record for us, or
for everybody. I think that's one of those records that really, put them on the map, but really changed the life of the Angstine.
Yes.
And like when I was a kid, that was one of the ones that it was like a go-to. I mean, I don't really talk about them much on the podcast, but you know, that definitely when you experience your first crushes and all that stuff, it's just kind of like there for you to kind of, you know,
yeah, exactly,
push you and
definitely, and so yeah, so I mean, like that's always been, you know, not, you know, we've never necessarily been a goth band or a synth band or Kayodot, you know, has gone through different kind of variations in what they do, um, but yeah, like different influences come out in different ways, and you learn to bring them into your style. But yeah, so yeah, calling it a death metal Vangelis is pretty cool because like yeah, there is that element of the sound design, the electronics, the synths, and then yeah, like listening back to it, I mean, Toby really went full force with like a lot of his harsher vocals on this new record.
yeah, he did.
You know,
He
which
did.
is the dude can sing too. I mean, he's got a beautiful,
a lot of lemon tea in
yeah,
that.
he's got a beautiful singing voice. But you know,
Yeah.
and in Maudlin Llewellyn, it used to be he used to do all the clean singing, and then our friend Byron used to do all the death vocals at that time. But since Byron doesn't really do the vocals anymore, that Toby has to kind of like fill both of those roles in his vocals. So I think he does a good job with it. But he kind of leaned into the harsher vocals on this one, you know. But I like it. I think it sounds cool.
I loved it.
Yeah.
What you shared with us on your podcast was amazing. Tell us about your podcast before we sign off, and then I'm going to do our typical Dish Dungeon trick. So
okay, yeah, sure.
get into your podcast. Give us the name. Let us.
Oh yeah,
let the listeners know. Yeah.
So it's called The Color of Air. I started it in 2014, but then got lazy. So, but basically, this past summer, I decided I wanted to bring it back because like it had been a while, and like I said, doing the Dungeons and thing, I had met a lot of really cool musicians that I wanted to talk to and pick. I love talking to other musicians and picking their brains. I'm a big fan of music documentaries, even if it's about a band that I don't necessarily like. There's, you know, like the behind the music shows back in the late 90s.
Oh, those were so good.
Even if I didn't like the band, I wanted to watch it.
I was still invested. Yeah, exactly.
You know, so yeah, and then, you know, like you think of like Mark Maron's podcast, you know, WTF, where like he goes into these really long form interviews with people. So that was kind of what I wanted to do with musicians, and I started out really just kind of interviewing my friends, but yeah, so I started it again. I brought it up this summer, and I've been doing every 2 weeks as opposed to every week, and I've banked enough episodes to get me through February, and then I've got a couple coming up with different people, and it's really been good. I've been able to get a lot more guests who are very interested to do it, and so that always makes it more fun. And so I've been able to interview. Yeah, so we did a very special one with Toby and Byron. Again, like we talked about the Kayodot record, but we also talked about Maudlin of the Well. And surprise, surprise, that's our my most popular episode. You know, that's given the most numbers because, like I said, there's just this huge Maudlin of the Well fan base out there. Which, like, anytime I post something on social media with Maudlin of the Well tagged, it's guaranteed I'm gonna get engagement and stuff like that because they're just
I know what to hashtag this episode.
Yeah, seriously. Put Maudlin on the hashtag. But yeah, like the Maudlin fans are really cool, and so they're you know, so they're very supportive, and they're like they're loyal. So it's like they stick, even though we haven't really done a Maudlin of the Well record since 2009. They've been with us, and you know, we did a couple of reunion shows in New York in 2015, and everyone was sold out. Granted, it was a very small club, but we
don't tell them that.
But they were sold out. They sold out.
It was the Nokia Theater. It was the Nokia Theater.
So we sold out both of those shows, and the vibe was just amazing. So yeah, those fans have always stuck with us, and yeah, and then The Color of Air, like I'm talking to Dungeons and people, I'm re-talking to some people I originally interviewed on like the first set of episodes, and seeing how people are doing now, and And then I've kind of moved into this thing where I've been really interested in musicians who do create their own take on instruments. So I interviewed a guy named Mark Deutsch who created this instrument called the Bazantar, which is like he's combining like an upright bass with like different Indian instruments and sympathetic strings.
So he made a bassolet from Dune, basically.
Yeah, which is where my name for my band came from, Balisette.
Yep, that's dope.
But yeah, so I interviewed him because I was like, this is fascinating. And then I've got another guy I'm talking to in a couple weeks whose big thing is he plays fretless classical guitar, which I would love to play at some point, and he's really interesting in what he does. So it's like I'm trying to find different people too, like who do stuff that I'm not as experienced with, to try to learn about it. It's just I just like learning about people and everything. So.
Oh, I get that. I mean, I've interviewed some folks on this.
Oh yeah,
podcast.
I'm sure. Yeah, it's a lot of fun,
and it's like it is, and I love music, and I love talking to musicians and
same
singers and everything. So it's always been a wondrous thing. This was actually supposed to be a 2011 project, and the initial podcast was supposed to be Dusan's Disc Dungeon.
Oh, okay.
Because I had a buddy of mine that was in college that was like a music aficionado. He knew like everything prog rock, everything death metal, and he just had this wealth of music. And then I went into his apartment, and it was literally a disc dungeon. He had, instead of like walls like you see on my wall, he had CDs and vinyl and everything just lined up as if it was, his own personal labyrinth of music darkness. And that's what makes this so fun. I love doing this, and I'm so glad that you're able to.
Oh, thank you for asking me, man.
Come on, man. I really appreciate it.
Like I said, I love talking about myself. So self promotion is I hate, gets annoying sometimes, but it's something I know I got to do to get the name out there and get the projects out there. And
absolutely. So as before we go, and I'm hoping to have you again in the future.
Oh yeah, definitely. Let me know.
And maybe I'll do something with you, Steve, and myself.
Oh yeah, I love Steve.
That would be kind of cool. Yeah, but what I usually do is I put people onto music. That's the whole premise of our show.
All right.
And I'm going to put you on because I'm going to be talking about it at the rest of this episode. It's the new Vangelis album, and I'll text it to you.
Oh, perfect.
It just came out September, and I didn't realize this, but he was actually working pretty hard, putting out albums pretty consistently. And, I just stumbled on it, and I was like, oh my God. And it's pretty great. It's called Juno to Jupiter.
Okay. Let me, I see it now. Yeah, it's on my Spotify. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Juno to Jupiter. And then what I'll ask you to do is then find something to put me onto. When we come back, you can be like a guest host.
Oh,
on the episode.
Sure.
So it'll be a lot of fun.
So, okay, do you want me to make recommendations to you now, or?
Yeah, that'd be great. Go for it.
Okay. Hold on. Let me pull up. That's that thing. Like, what have you been listening to? And it's just like, I don't know, all sorts of crap.
Yeah.
Like, that's what sucks is I've been listening to a lot of older stuff that I, love. So I haven't really been as much with the newer stuff. But I'll hip you to a couple dungeon synth artists because I think
that'd be perfect.
I think that kind of,
because I got into like Gunship is like one of my biggest go-tos right now.
Okay, I don't think I've heard. Are they like a synthwave band?
Yeah, they're synthwave.
Yeah, synthwave. There's an artist I know called Evergreen, and they do a project called Fogweaver, which is really, really good. And also, a lot of dungeon synth people have a lot of varying different projects. And so Evergreen also does a project called Hideous Gumphidious, which is also really good, and it's like a totally different style to Fogweaver, so I can recommend them.
Put them up, and then give me a specific album.
Okay.
And then I'll digest it, and then you digest that one, and when we come back, we'll have our discussion.
Okay, yeah.
All right, that'll be a lot of fun.
All right, yeah. All right, I'll send that to you.
Perfect. All right, friends, this has been another wondrous tour into the realm of the dark depths of the Disc Dungeon. Thank you again, Greg, for joining me on this. Yeah, in this pit of despair and hope.
Hopefully not too much despair.
No. There was no despair actually at all. It just sounds nice.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have a few interesting choice words about the Vangelis album that I just put Greg onto. And then Greg will come back and give his opinion on it. And we will do this again.
All right, sounds great.
So, all right, until next time.